It didn't start like a global controversy. It started like a build video, a garage project, a simple challenge between creators and machines. But what followed would pull the attention of the entire automotive world. A Bugatti, a crash legend, and a rebuild that many said should never have been attempted. For most people, a Bugatti is untouchable. It's not just a car, it's a statement of engineering perfection, a symbol of precision, control, and absolute luxury. But in the world of automotive content, boundaries are meant to be tested. And that's exactly what happened when Mat Armstrong stepped into the story. Known for his bold rebuild projects, Mat has built a reputation for taking what others consider beyond repair and bringing it back to life. Engines rebuilt from ruins, supercars restored from wreckage, project that most professionals wouldn't even attempt. But this time, it wasn't just another rebuild. It was a Bugatti, a machine designed with almost obsessive precision. Every bolt, every component, every calibration engineered to perfection. And when something like that gets damaged, the question isn't just can it be fixed? The question becomes, should it even be touched? As clips of the rebuild surfaced, the internet reacted instantly. Some people admired the ambition, others questioned the risk, and a growing number of viewers began debating something much bigger. Was this innovation or interference with perfection? Among the noise, another name entered the conversation. Known for sharp commentary and strong opinions in the automotive space, FXAlexG added fuel to an already burning discussion. His reactions, breakdowns, and critical takes began circulating widely. What was once a rebuild video had now become a global debate. And somewhere in the middle of all this attention, the silence from Bugatti itself was louder than anything else. Because when a brand like Bugatti stays quiet, people notice. Not weeks, not months, but eventually that silence breaks. And when it does, the entire industry listens. Reports began to surface suggesting that Bugatti leadership had finally acknowledged the situation surrounding the car, the rebuild, and the controversy growing online. No dramatic announcement, no public confrontation, just a carefully measured response from a company that has built its reputation on precision and control. And that alone made everything feel more serious. Because Bugatti is not just another car manufacturer. It represents a level of engineering where mistakes are not part of the language. So when discussions involving one of their machines become global content, the response carries weight. Behind the scenes, conversations in the automotive world began to shift. Was this damaging to brand integrity? Or was it an unexpected showcase of passion for engineering? Supporters of Mat Armstrong argued that rebuilding a machine like this is not destruction, but respect, a form of mechanical resurrection that proves how far engineering knowledge has come in the hands of creators. Critics, however, saw it differently. To them, a Bugatti is sacred, a finished masterpiece that should remain untouched once it leaves a factory floor. And in the middle of those two perspectives stood the reaction everyone was waiting for. Bugatti's stance. Subtle, controlled, and carefully framed, the response didn't aim to escalate conflict. Instead, it acknowledged the attention, the discussion, and the growing fascination around the rebuild culture. But it also reinforced something important, that engineering excellence and brand identity are not easily separated from perception. As the statement circulated, it sparked a new wave of interpretation. Was it approval? Was it criticism? Or was it simply recognition of how the automotive world has changed? Because today, cars are no longer just machines hidden behind showroom glass. They are content. They are stories. They are global conversations unfolding in real time. And in that shift, creators like Mat Armstrong represent something new. A bridge between technical skill and public engagement. A way of showing engineering not as something distant, but something alive, rebuildable, and human. Even FXAlexG's commentary added another layer to that evolving narrative. Agreement from some, disagreement from others, but undeniable attention from everyone. Because whether people support or question the rebuild, they are still watching. And in the world of digital storytelling, attention is everything. As the debate continued, one thing became clear. This wasn't just about a Bugatti anymore. It was about how modern culture interacts with engineering, how creators influence perception, how audiences interpret value, and how legacy brands respond to an internet that never stops talking. The rebuilt car itself became a symbol, not just of damage and repair, but of discussion. A machine that once represented perfection now sat at the center of interpretation. And that is where the real story lived. Not in the garage, not in the factory, but in the space between admiration and controversy. As time passed, the noise slowly stabilized. The internet moved on to new debates, new builds, new reactions. But this moment stayed in memory, because it wasn't just about what was rebuilt. It was about what it represented. The collision of tradition and modern media, of engineering purity and digital storytelling, of silence from legacy brands and loud reaction from a world watching them. And somewhere in that balance, the response from Bugatti marked a turning point. Not a conclusion, but a reminder that in a world where everything is filmed, analyzed, and shared, even silence becomes part of the story. The garage lights fade. The tools go quiet. The conversation continues online. And the question remains, when perfection meets reconstruction, who defines the value of what remains? It didn't begin as a global debate. It began in a garage with a damaged machine and a camera rolling. A moment most people would ignore, became the center of an entire automotive storm. A Bugatti, not just any car. A machine built at the absolute peak of engineering precision. Every curve, every bolt, every component designed with purpose that most people will never fully comprehend. And when something like that gets damaged, it doesn't just become a repair job. It becomes a question of identity. Because a Bugatti is not meant to be rebuilt casually. It is meant to be preserved. But in the modern era of content creation, preservation is no longer the only narrative. This is where the story of Mat Armstrong enters, a creator known for doing what others hesitate to even attempt. His reputation was not built on simple modifications, but on transformation, taking broken machines and rebuilding them into something that moves again. Not perfectly, not conventionally, but against expectation. And when the world discovered that a crashed Bugatti had entered his garage, the reaction was immediate. Confusion, curiosity, admiration, and criticism. Because for many, this wasn't just a project. It felt like crossing a line. The internet split into perspectives almost instantly. Some said it was engineering passion at its highest level, proving that even the most complex machines can be understood and revived outside of factory conditions. Others argued it was interference with something sacred, that certain machines are not meant to be touched once broken. And in the middle of that debate, another voice entered the conversation. FXAlexG, a commentator known for direct opinions and strong analysis in the automotive content space. His breakdown of the situation didn't soften the edges. Instead, it sharpened them. Clips circulated rapidly. Reactions multiplied. Opinions intensified. What was once a rebuild video had transformed into a digital battleground of ideas. But through all of it, one voice remained absent. Bugatti. No immediate statement. No public clarification. Just silence. And in the world of high-performance engineering, silence is never neutral. It is interpreted. It is analyzed. It becomes part of the narrative itself. As the rebuild progressed online, attention shifted from curiosity to scrutiny. Viewers began asking deeper questions. Is this respect for engineering, or disruption of legacy? Is this innovation, or overreach? Is the value of a machine defined by its manufacturer, or by its ability to be revived? Each question pulled the audience further into the debate. And with every new update from the garage, the conversation grew louder. But still, no official response from Bugatti. That silence created a vacuum. And in that vacuum, interpretation grew unchecked. Then something changed. Subtle reports began emerging suggesting that discussions had taken place behind the scenes within Bugatti's internal circles. Nothing dramatic, nothing public, but enough to signal that the situation had been noticed at the highest level. Because when a brand like Bugatti is discussed at this scale, silence can no longer remain permanent. Eventually, it breaks. And when it does, it doesn't arrive like internet drama. It arrives with precision, controlled, measured, intentional. The response that followed did not aim to escalate the situation. It did not target individuals. It did not fuel online conflict. Instead, it acknowledged the attention the situation had received. And in that acknowledgement, the entire conversation shifted tone. because now it was no longer just a viral rebuild. It had become a moment of reflection for the automotive world. What does it mean when modern creators interact with hyper-engineered machines originally designed in closed environments? Where does ownership end and interpretation begin? The reaction to Bugatti's response was immediate. Some viewed it as validation, a recognition that the passion behind the rebuild community cannot be ignored. Others saw it as caution, a reminder that engineering heritage carries boundaries that should not be overlooked. And in between those perspectives, the conversation evolved. This was no longer just about one car. It became about the relationship between legacy engineering and modern digital storytelling. Because today, machines are no longer confined to garages and factories. They exist online. They are rebuilt on camera. They are analyzed in real time. They become part of global discourse within hours. And creators like Mat Armstrong sit directly at the center of that shift. Not as disruptors, but as translators between mechanical complexity and public understanding. While commentators like FXAlexG add another layer, interpreting, challenging, questioning. And through that interaction, the automotive world becomes something new. Not static, not isolated, but constantly evolving through visibility. As the discussion continued, attention slowly began to move away from shock and toward understanding. People began to separate emotion from analysis. Was this destruction or documentation of possibility? Was the Bugatti diminished, or was its story extended into a new form? There was no single answer, and that uncertainty is what kept the story alive. Because in modern media, certainty fades quickly, but questions linger. Eventually, the noise began to settle. New content appeared online. New debates emerged. New controversies replaced old ones. But this moment did not disappear. It remained as a reference point, a case study in how engineering, media, and perception collide in real time. And somewhere within that timeline, Bugatti's response stood as a marker, not of conflict, but of awareness, a recognition that even the most controlled engineering environments are now part of an uncontrolled digital ecosystem. As the garage lights dimmed in the final scenes of the rebuild, and the footage circulated across platforms, the world was no longer just watching a car being repaired. They were watching a shift in culture, a shift where engineering is no longer hidden. It is visible, it is debated, it is shared, and that visibility changes everything. Because once a machine enters a digital world, it no longer belongs to one narrative. It belongs to all of them. The story doesn't end with repair. It doesn't end with response. It doesn't end with commentary. It continues in interpretation. And that is where this moment ultimately lives. Not in the garage, not in the statement, not in the reaction, but in the ongoing conversation between tradition and transformation. And as a final frame fades, one question remained quietly in the background. In a world where everything can be rebuilt, recorded, and redefined, what does it truly mean for something to remain original? It started as just another rebuild video, a damaged Bugatti in a garage, and a creator willing to take on what most people wouldn't even touch. A machine built for perfection, now sitting in pieces. For most of the automotive world, a Bugatti is untouchable. It represents precision, engineering, and limits pushed to the absolute edge. But when Mat Armstrong entered the picture, that idea was challenged. A crashed hypercar, a camera rolling, and a rebuild that instantly divided the internet. Some called it passion. Others called it disrespect to engineering perfection. Then came the commentary from FXAlexG, and everything escalated even further. Reactions spread. Opinions clashed. The debate became global. And through all of it, one silence stood out. Bugatti. No immediate response. No public statement. Just silence that made the situation even bigger. Until eventually, that silence broke. A carefully controlled response surfaced from Bugatti's side. Not emotional, not dramatic, but precise. Acknowledging the attention, the discussion, and the controversy surrounding the rebuild. And just like that, the conversation shifted. Because now it wasn't just about a car anymore. It was about ownership of meaning. Can a machine designed for perfection be rebuilt without changing what it represents? Or does the act of rebuilding create something entirely new? As the internet continued debating, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a project anymore. It was a cultural moment, a collision between engineering legacy and modern content creation, between silence and global reaction. And in the end, the real story wasn't the damage or the rebuild. It was a response that changed how everyone saw it.